Good Sunday afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Fire Up. It's with me, Miss Candy, and Mr. Smokin' Jeremy B. How are you, Smokin' Jeremy B?
Any day I wake up is good, because it's better to be seen than viewed.
This is true. That is very good. That is very good. Well, we are in the middle of Super Wild Card Weekend in NFL football. What better weekend is there?
Super Bowl? That's about it.
The only thing with Super Bowl weekend is it's just one. You have all this hype,
But
all this.
it's the game is what I'm getting at.
I know.
This the playoffs are great. Yeah, Will Vogel's team, the Panthers, couldn't sniff the playoffs. Even if
Well,
they drafted C.J. Stroud instead of Bryce Young, because that O line's trash, the weapons are bad, and that defense is the only thing good. The O line is absolutely horrid.
yes. Well, Mr. Will is very busy. Good afternoon. Playoffs. And then Braylon says, "Hey, Candy, I really want your Packers to win. Hate Dallas more." I couldn't agree with you more, Braylon, but we'll get to that a little bit later. And Will is saying, "Don't remind me." And then they're talking about, and then the Lions will crush the Packers' hopes and
That's not
dreams.
how it would line up though. Because
Mm-mm.
if San Francisco beats Dallas, who's the 2 seed, that's the 7th seed, they will have to go to San Francisco to play the 49ers, which means the Lions would get the home game on whoever wins between the Bucks and Eagles at 4:25 today.
Interesting. Yes, it'll be a
And
while
I would
before.
rather that be the case. I would
Mhm.
rather that be the case. If you think about it, what is the better road? Somebody you have not played and
Right.
somebody you've already beaten, or somebody you split games with and then lost to the other team?
Mm-hmm.
I would rather the Packers win and go play San Francisco,
Yep.
maybe cause a couple little minor mishaps because they're angry and playing with a
Mm-hmm.
little fire on the
Yes.
defensive side because they're trying to save Joe Barry's job again.
Yes.
8 games of
Well,
despair and misery, and then all of a sudden, boom, the Packers play on defense.
I know. It gets to that point where
Hasn't it
it's.
been all 3 years with them now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
I'm just making sure I had
Mm-hmm.
my I's dotted and T's crossed with that.
Yes. Well, let's recap yesterday's games before we go into really today's games and tomorrow's games, especially since they moved one of the games to tomorrow. But let's recap. Let's start with the first game yesterday. The Browns at the Texans.
The Texans showed up, the Browns didn't. They were still on the plane. That's all I can say.
It amazed me. Here you have the rookie quarterback against a veteran quarterback, and who lights out did played better. Not just a little bit, but lights out. You would have thought the veteran, but no, it was not the veteran.
C.J. Stroud did everything to Joe Flacco that Joe Flacco did to Davis Mills in the previous meeting. And like I said, because C.J. Stroud did not play, that's the only reason why Cleveland barely won that game. It wasn't a blowout. It was a barely got by them. I think it was less than 7 points. And C.J. Stroud is that much better than Davis Mills. That proved it to everyone.
Oh yeah. Plus, they were at home. I do think there is an advantage at home, and I hate to say that because we're going to talk about Dallas later, and Dallas obviously has a big advantage playing at home because they've just been playing better at home. But there's something to be said about playing at home unless you're a much better team. And I think when you're an evenly matched, because kind of all thought they were kind of a little more even, but when you have that little bit, that little edge is that home field advantage when you think it's an even game.
Yeah. And James Burgess said it best. Joe Flacco went limp. I have a nickname that goes with that.
Oh,
If you want to hear it, I'll let it out because it'll get some laughs and some reactions. It's already been on my show a few times, and it's not cussing. It's Joe
go ahead.
Flaccid.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Yes. The Browns defense was really suspect for the number one defense. They weren't proving
The
themselves.
crowd made it hard on the offense and defense. Um, if you looked, every time. Every time they were in the huddle. That crowd was loud. And that's exactly what, and jumping forward to tonight's game with the Lions, that's what David Montgomery wants the fans to do to the Rams. Because if they're in the huddle, whether on offense or defense, it makes it hard on them. Because they don't know your play calling.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, I was really surprised that Texans defense really came to play too.
You know, as bad as that offense has been off and on, the defense has actually been middle of the road to very good.
Mm, yes.
I mean, I don't think they've been ranked ever since they've been there, lower than 15th in the league. And if you think about that, they've only made the playoffs one other time than this, and that
Mm-hmm.
was with Deshaun Watson.
The Texas O-line was underrated, was the biggest takeaway I got from that game. They had Garrett out of position all night, runner pass.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
cool.
Larry Tunstall was doing a job on Myles Garrett. I was enjoying watching it. When he got hurt there for a minute, I was like, oh no, this might not be good. And instead of sticking him on the backup, they rotated him to the other side. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Why take him away when he just got at least 2 or 3 plays that he
Right.
might be able to take on a guy not as caliber as Laramie Tunstall?
Yes. And then we had the fourth coldest game in NFL history played last night. And all I have to say is, as much as we all thought it might be a sold out stadium, they said it wasn't sold out, but they also said that you would not have been wanting to sit in that upper section. The bottom bowl wasn't as bad, but the upper section, because the wind was blowing, that it was negative, 27, 20, 30 below zero with that wind. And
Yeah,
just
it was
sitting there,
negative 23 at the start of the game. By the end of the game, they said it was in the 30s below zero.
that was just crazy. And we saw a kind of the
And
game that we thought we'd see from Miami in that kind of cold weather. They're just not a cold weather team.
when you're play for a place that averages 72 degrees year round,
Hmm.
and you go to a place that averages negative 10 from January through March, you're not going to play well there.
No, no. And let's face it, Miami did themselves in the last game of the year. Losing to Buffalo made them go to Kansas City.
Hmm.
And had they done better down the stretch, the end of the season, they would have had some momentum, and they didn't have any momentum, and it showed. First half they hung in there a little bit, but second half they were totally demolished.
And him talking about Mahomes' helmet shattered, it shattered more to the cold than it was the hit. Because that was a glancing blow. If that had been a direct helmet to helmet hit, targeting would have been called.
Right. I agree. But it was crazy to see the helmet shattered. I'm like, I
I,
saw that.
they almost wanted to put him in concussion protocol. You saw that. They
Mm-hmm.
made him call timeout and change his helmet.
Yes. And then he was complaining because his helmet wasn't the new helmet didn't fit the
Right.
same.
Yeah, it didn't fit him right, and he didn't feel comfortable in it. He'd have rather had the one with the, because all it was the shell. The helmet itself wasn't broken. They have a shell.
Yes. Well, and it was so funny because we were watching the first game, and the first game was previewing the second game, and they were previewing how Taylor Swift was going to be out in the elements in this at this cold game, and I'm like, oh come on, she will not be out in the elements. She's going to be in this cozy little suite. It's heated. It's, yes, it may not be as warm as being in a house, but really, so yes, you're James. I'm so happy that Taylor Swift had a nice, comfy suite. And number one candy, MIA screwed this up at the end of the regular season.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, he gave you a +1. He does
Plus one.
scoring for good comments.
Thanks, James. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Miami did screw it up. They shouldn't have rested their starters versus Buffalo in that Week 18 game. And I have said this going into the wild cards. The teams that rest their starters in Week 18 tend not to do well in the wild card round. They're fine if they make it to the division round, but there's only been 5 winners of teams that's rested players in the wild card round, and even Candy knows about this from the year they rested Rodgers and company.
Oh
They
yeah.
lost the last game, went in and lost in the wild card, and was bounced.
Yes. There's something to be said about continuity, and it just, yeah, you're
It is
right.
why I agree Dan Campbell should have played the starters and gone for the win, and pull them at the right time. I
Yep.
mean, once they had that two score lead at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and Mullins and company drove down and scored and made it a 1-score game, you can't take your starters out. If it was a 2 or 3 score lead and they didn't score on that drive, then
Hmm.
yes, you could have pulled your starters on offense, but you still want your starters on defense to stop them.
I agree. I agree. Well, let's get off the Miami warm or cold bandwagon, as
0
we
and
should.
5 in degrees under 40.
Oh yeah. There is a little bit of breaking news, or that JJ McCarthy is declaring for the NFL draft. I don't
Who
think that's
said
a
that?
surprise.
Who said that was happening?
I was going to say, I don't think that's a surprise. Uh, I wonder if him doing that, if he has any insight to the coaching, if Jim Harbaugh is going to be back or not.
And Braylon Dennis agrees with me. Yes, thank you, Jeremy. Somebody finally said it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think about it. The Jags thought about doing it because Trevor Lawrence was kind of hurt, but after the Texans won, they had to play their starters, and Trevor Lawrence had to play hurt and got beat, which is how the Texans won the division. Coach of the Year and Offensive Rookie of the Year are on the same team because
Correct.
they were not even predicted to win more than 7 games this year.
Mm-hmm. But funny, that kind of sounds somewhat like the Packers too. They weren't predicted to do anything either, and look at, they're in the
But
playoffs.
who told you prior to the season I see them as second place because the Minnesota defense was worse than everybody thought?
You did, you did. But just because you're second place doesn't mean you make the playoffs.
No, and I said there would be a chance because if they only win 9 games, they might not make it. But you didn't. You won 10, didn't you?
No, we won 9.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The Seahawks failed to get their 10th win. That's how they got it. That's how you
Yes,
got in. Hey,
yes,
it doesn't matter how you got there.
correct.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
You
thank
got the
you.
total win total I predicted. I said you guys would be 9-8. You thought 8-9. Again,
Hmm.
I
Yep,
remember.
yes. And let's face it, we're gonna go. The Packers are going into Jerry's World, 18 in Stadium, which we've never lost, but we've only played there 4 times, and obviously it was with a much different quarterback. And let's face it, Dallas is playing really tough at home. But I will say that Dallas somehow, some way, always finds a way to make mistakes when it comes to big games.
Come on, say it like it is. They crapped the bed.
And I don't know if that's part of McCarthy.
Mhm.
My question would be is, if they lose, if Dallas loses, does McCarthy lose his job?
He should.
And I
I,
agree.
I, I said if they don't make the Super Bowl with this roster being as talented as it is, that's Dak makes 60 million next year. If they don't make the Super Bowl, you can't have a $60 million quarterback on your roster, and there's almost no dead cap. That means Dak becomes a free agent. They'll just cut him. They won't even have to trade him because right
Hmm.
now, what team that needs a quarterback is going to trade for Dak Prescott?
I don't know.
I, well, think about it. Who's out there that would want to trade for a quarterback that can't get it done?
Well, you don't want to put so much salary cap, spend so much salary cap for one player that's not. I mean, he's not a bag of chips and all that.
Right. I mean, yes, he's had better numbers this year than he's had since his MVP like season. This has been
Hmm.
the best he's played. And that remember the next year was when he broke his leg and was out the year. So you can't count that against him,
Right.
but you can count the 3 years in between that against him. Since McCarthy's been there, no less. Okay.
I think it'll come down to I think it'll come down to the Packers wide receivers getting free and Jordan hitting them and not missing them and being on the same page. I think that's key. I think Aaron Jones will do good. Um, but I think more so, and then I guess our defense too, because I never know with Joe Barry and our defense what he's going to do. And sometimes he lays flat eggs and sometimes he's good, but that always scares me,
I'm
but Dallas has all the pressure on them. The Packers really don't have any pressure on them. They weren't expected to be there. They can play more loose. What do you think, Jeremy?
I think with no expectations on the Packers of even making the playoffs, they have nothing to lose. They can play, for lack of a better term, balls to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
You go out there, you fire on all systems go. You make Dallas one-dimensional, which is what the Lions did. Take away their run. Use a run blitz, which we've seen Joe Barry do lately. He hasn't been laying back on the run game. So make them one-dimensional. Don't let Tony Pollard and Deuce Vaughn take over the game. Held them to a combined under 100 yards, and Dak makes mistakes when under pressure. So that means not just run blitz, but pass
Yes.
blitz, which is
Yep.
something you guys are good at. I think in pressures, you guys were at top 15 in the league, if I remember right, and in sacks, you were in the top 20, if my memory serves me right, for the regular
Mhm.
season. That means you guys know how to get to the quarterback. We weren't even top 20 in sacks. We were in that 20 to 25 range, which is better than last year and better
Mhm.
than the year before. It's minute improvement.
So there's another game that's being played tonight, and it's more in your backyard. You want to
It
preview
is my
that?
backyard.
It is your.
Absolutely. Rams versus Lions right here in Detroit at Ford Field, because why? Waiting.
Why? Because
The
you wouldn't.
Lions won the division. Yes, absolutely. I just
Yes,
wanted to hear you say it.
I know. I know. I give kudos to the Lions. Hey, they're up and coming, and they've done some remarkable things under Dan Campbell.
So it's the same thing for the Lions that the Packers have to do. But the Lions have done it very well all season. They are number one in DVOA for advanced statistics versus the run. That's scoring run defense as well as yardage run defense against. The thing with the Rams, what have they proven they can't do all year? They can't stop a good running team. In the DVOA advanced statistics, they are 32nd in the league in scoring defense against. That is not a good combination with the lethal duo we have that runs the ball and a healthy O line versus an O line that likes to give up pressure, doesn't really open holes except through the middle because they have suspect tackles because their starting tackles at the beginning of the year are still out. So that gives the edge to the Lions. And we're also a top five offense. Rams are a top 15 offense. They came on strong with the run game late. But if you hold Kyron Williams to 70 yards, which is what we've done to every superstar running back all year, 70 yards or less, Matt Stafford makes mistakes. They're 1-7 in that situation.
I think you guys can pressure Matt Stafford, and I think that will really help you guys.
Dan Campbell in the play calling that he said he was taking over after the Chicago game, it has shown that his hand is on this defense because we became 100% more aggressive than we had been all year. Hutchinson went from having 6.5 sacks to ending the season with 11.5 sacks. Actually, no, it was 5.5 to 11.5. So He got 6 sacks over the last 4 or 5 games. That's a huge. Both quarterbacks, as much as I hate to say it, are absolutely garbage versus pressure this season.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Stafford is 31. Jared Goff is 29th versus pressure. Stafford has thrown a couple more interceptions than what Goff has this year. So they're pretty much even in that category. But our O line is healthy, their O line is suspect. So it leans towards a Lions win. And I know every single staffer with Dan Orlovsky on his podcast picked the Rams to win. Guess what? Every single one of them picked the Browns to beat the Texans too.
There's a reason why we play these games. I mean, let's face it. I think the interesting comments that a lot of people have said have are how many Stafford Lions jerseys will be in attendance.
I don't even care. That has no bearing on how the game is played.
I
And
know.
if it does, that means that the players are not paying attention to the field and they're paying attention to the stands.
That's true.
This is Jared Goff's team. It's Jared Goff's town. We embraced him now. He did something Matt Stafford was never able to do with much less roster that Stafford had in a lot of points in his career here. Not towards the end, but I'm talking about when we were going good during the 3 playoff runs. That 2014-15 team was one of the best rosters in the league. Number 2 overall defense, number 1 rushing defense, number 2 in NFL history.
Your point, part of it is coaching as well, because you didn't have Dan Campbell. And as much as I like Dan Campbell, don't get me wrong, I think sometimes I definitely disagree with some of his very aggressive coaching. I would say some of his calls.
I agree. I mean, he went on full tilt after the bad call at the end of the Dallas game, and I don't really blame him. I would be on full tilt too. And if anybody says they wouldn't be, they've never been in that type of pressure situation. You go full tilt when something goes off kilter, and you do the same thing.
Right, but there were some other times in some of the other games when he went for it, and I'm like, I don't know that I would have gone for the points, and stuff. I obviously I'm not a coach, so obviously I don't get paid lots of money like he does, so but I do think he does gamble a lot more than a lot of others. It'll be interesting to see how this game turns out. I mean, you're at home, which gives you guys an advantage, and because you guys can be loud in there, and that's the one thing, because you're inside Ford Field.
Right.
The loud factor takes it to a different level than an outside stadium would.
And Kelly Stafford was mad because we didn't have a suite available for her and her friends, so she's doing a friendly get together at a tavern near the stadium instead with her friends that came in from out of town. But the reason why there was no suites available is because the season ticket holders with tickets on the opposing sidelines are offered the suites first so that the opposing team can have seats by the sidelines. And yes, it is a sold out game. They have just opened their second batch of standing room tickets. I think that was done on Friday, if I remember right. So, yeah, it's a sold out game. When you're selling standing room tickets and those are sold in 5,000 blocks, that's why that one game said there was 82,000 in attendance. They said they only seat 65. No, there was 85,000 people there on the concourse and in the aisles trying to watch, sitting on steps.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
It is crazy. But that almost rivaled our biggest home attendance at Pontiac Silverdome, which did seat 82,000.
Well, at least everybody will be able to see this game because it'll be on NBC as opposed to last night's game on Peacock.
Yeah. I was able to watch it, but I got a different service than everybody else, so it doesn't matter. I don't use YouTube. I don't use Sunday Ticket.
I was able to watch it on NBC because I was in one of the counties close to Miami, so that I was allowed
Right.
to watch.
Miami's considered a major market because of their population. I think Tampa Bay even got to see it too on NBC.
I'm not
But
sure.
because
Okay.
they're I think they're a top 50 populated city. If you
Okay.
were in the Detroit area, you could watch it on NBC. If you were in New York, LA, all those places.
Interesting. Interesting.
So
Interesting.
it's the that is what's considered a major to mid-major market.
Yep.
It
Silverdome
was
Columbian.
actually the WrestleMania 3. It was 102,000 people in attendance. It's still a record for an indoor attendance ever.
Wow, that is just crazy. That is just crazy. Well, on from our games for tonight, there is two games tomorrow because they moved the Steelers Bills game to Monday because they are having a winter storm right now.
Update on that. It may get moved to Tuesday because the storm is slowing on how it's moving through the area. So they're talking about even pushing it back another day.
You're kidding. I had not heard that yet.
I just
Wow.
heard that this morning.
Wow, that is crazy. But I mean, and I've heard some grumblings from some of the Bills fans. Here's what I'm going to say. You have to be safe. First and foremost, we are playing a game, and I get everybody loves this and NFL football, but to get there you have to be safe. And then the players' safety once they're in the stadium to play a game in this the weather that they were. I know they were also asking for people to shovel snow, and they were going to pay them $20 an hour.
Yep. And Bills Mafia tried to keep up, but overnight it changed to freezing rain. And once it became a layer of ice, shoveling's not going to work.
No,
Trust
you
me,
are
I know. We
correct.
dealt with it here Friday night.
Ouch, ouch. How was the weather there today?
-9 with the wind chill.
Ooh.
It's a bit brisk.
How warm can they warm Ford Field?
Ford Field's completely sealed with like really good heaters. They'll
Okay,
probably have it some. They usually try to keep the temperature between 68 and 72 degrees. That way,
okay.
when it fills up, it doesn't get too humid because that slick turf becomes slick when humid. So I'm quite sure they'll have the thermostat right at 70 till people start to show up, and then turn it down to 69 to keep the humidity down. And then
Mm.
the body heat will keep that feeling like 73, 74 degrees the entire time.
Okay, back to the Bills game. Who do we think is going to take that game?
I think it's going to be a case of the division winners winning all the wild card rounds in the AFC. I don't see Mason Rudolph and a TJ Wattless defense beating the Bills.
Yeah, I think with TJ Watt out, that's a big blow for the Steelers, and they've been playing so erratic. I would say this year that I agree with you. I agree with you. Do we think Tomlin will come back then?
Tomlin was talking about retiring after this season before the season even started. He's tired of the grind. He wants to spend time with his family. His kids are getting older. He's missing their childhood. He talked about all of this. And he's also talked about the attitude of the fans that want him gone. It wears on you. It has to. I'm
Mm-hmm.
quite sure Matt Patricia is still sitting somewhere with scorch marks on his butt from the things we said about him.
That that's true. As you, Matt Patricia.
Yeah,
I
that's my favorite name for him, but I was being polite. Their team is
know.
in the playoffs. But guess
Yep.
what? That bend don't break defense looks exactly like the defense he ran with the Lions. It's not working. They've lost 4 of their last 5. And that's the other game that's on tomorrow night. You know, I think Sunday with most of Americans that work Monday through Friday having the night off, they actually got it right putting the Lions and Rams in this prime time slot versus the prime time slot on Monday. Because on Monday, you have to go to work the next day. Half the viewers are probably going to check out if the game's over in the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a tight game, they might stay up and watch the whole thing, but it'll really be the Philadelphia market and the Tampa Bay market that stays up for the entire game unless you're a diehard football slappy like me.
I agree. I agree. I think the better games are tonight, and I think that in both games, well, at least, and I hope so. Let's put it that way too. I mean, for both of our sakes, that I hope. But I really I hope they're really good games. Like yesterday's games, the Browns game was good till half, and then after half, it really was very one sided. Very
The
one.
back-to-back pick sixes by Joe Flacco, that sealed their fate. I
Yep.
knew they weren't scoring another point. I
Right.
didn't even have to watch the rest of the game.
Yep.
I just watched the score roll on the Google pinned scoreboard on my phone.
Wow. Well, look at all these people that are commenting. I love it. I love it. Thank you, everyone, for watching so far. I'm going to take a little station identification here, break, and say that we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Scott's book, you can see it up in the upper right corner. Lessons from the Microphone: Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is available on Amazon or Kindle. If you want to be a guest on one of our shows, comment like all these people are. I wonder if some of these might want to be guests coming up. You never know who you'll see. But you can call Scott for advertising, 954-304-4941. If you like listening to podcasts, our audio version can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like this show, share it with all your friends. Subscribe. There's a little red subscribe button right underneath Jeremy. Subscribe. Share it all over.
There, down there.
Exactly. We're striving for as many subscribers as we can, and we always give you such good content. Like we have all kinds of shows on our network. We have Inside the Pigskin. We have 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, Sports Exchange, Pundit. We have, let's see, Professor and Pupil. We have Fire Up Wisconsin, Fire Up Florida, Fire Up Michigan. Some shows are on more.
And us.
Oh, of course. What other shows do we have? No Limits, and then we would have
The Real and the
Motor
Rare.
City Madmouth too show.
And the Real and the Rare.
And the Real and the Rare. So you got to catch our shows. If you haven't subscribed, why not? Start now. So we're going to switch a little bit from NFL. I was reading an article and I was thinking, we always talk about coaching trees, but we always talk about NFL coaching trees, like Bill Belichick. Oh, this coach came from the Bill Belichick tree, or Andy Reid, this guy came from this tree and this
tree. Or the Shanahan, or the Sean Payton, or the Rex Ryan, or whatever.
Exactly. But we don't normally talk about Nick Saban's coaching tree. And now that he's retiring,
it's huge. That's all I got to say, people.
It is. And I was so surprised. And I was reading an article that said thousands of players have played for him. Mm-hmm. And there's obviously lots of great players, but we don't give credit to the coaching tree that he actually has. And that's where he really made his mark, is what a lot of people are saying. And we don't give him credit for that.
And a lot of his coaches have been very successful, I might add. Some of them not so much. But the Saban coaching tree, just from Alabama alone, that's from 2011 to present, there's been 20 different head coaches and coordinators that have came out of there.
20. So let's read off some.
Okay. In 2023, Lance Taylor went to Western Michigan. 2022, Ron Cooper and Dan Lanning. Ron Cooper went to Long Island University. Dan Lanning, the current head coach at Oregon. That's why he was a favorite to get the coaching job there. Joe Judge, former head coach and currently couch sitting after being fired from the Patriots this past offseason. New York Giants. Phil Napier, Louisiana Lafayette. Jeremy Pruitt, the guy at Tennessee, who I wouldn't mind seeing if Ben Johnson's not a coordinator at Detroit, just saying. Mike Loxley, Maryland. Lane Kiffin, Florida Atlantic. Mario Cristobal, Oregon. Major Applewhite, Houston. Jeff Collins at Temple. Jim McElwain, Colorado State. Kurt Signetti, Indiana, Pennsylvania. Uh, Eric Keesaw, Fresno State. Mike Losley, Maryland. Steve Sarkeesian, Texas. Brent Kay, Georgia Tech. Lou Spanos, Connecticut. Butch Jones, Arkansas State. And Charles Huff at Marshall. That's 20 just from the Alabama tree.
Well, and then there's Jimbo Fisher. He was under Saban. Kirby Smart was under Saban. Will Muschamp. Let's see, Mark D'Antonio. He was under. There was a couple of other big ones that I
The
thought.
ones from LSU specifically: Kirby Smart, Adam Gase, Jimbo Fisher, Derek Dooley, Mel Tucker, Will Muschamp, and Michael Haywood. From his short stint with the Miami Dolphins: Dan Quinn, Mike Mularkey, Jason Garrett, and Scott Linehan.
That is such a list of coaches.
At MSU is Pat Shermer, Josh McDaniels, Mark D'Antonio, Morris Watt, and Bobby Williams. And then from his time at Toledo, it was Tom Amstutz, Dean Pease, and Lawrence L.C. Cole. All of these guys were either a high-end coordinator or a head coach with some moderation of success in some way or the other, with the exception of Joe Judge.
And you never know. Joe Judge might come back and be successful with another team. I mean, right now, no, but you never know.
And he was an assistant with Bill Belichick. So he actually comes from the Bill Belichick coaching tree. He was under him. Think about that. Everybody says, oh, Bill Belichick doesn't have one successful coach. They all forget one of the last years when Cleveland was there, before that team shut down for a while, they were there. Yeah, Rex Ryan is all in. He's one of the few national pundits, other than Kyle Brandt of the NFL Network, with the other guy, the young kid that loves Brad Holmes and did the interview with him prior to the season. I can't think of his name. It was Kyle Brandt and Peter Schrager. That's him. Mm-hmm. They pick the Lions to beat the Rams. So those are three guys I actually like their opinion. And I like the way they talk about it. And they're not Lion slappies. They're right. Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes slappies.
Yes. Oh, that's what I said. Listen.
No, you said he coached with him. He actually was an assistant under Bill Belichick at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it wasn't really coaching with him. It was coaching for him still.
For him.
Because he was the linebackers coach and Saban was the assistant linebackers coach at that time.
It's just interesting because people always talk about how successful he was. And we think about successful coaches and we only think national championships or Super Bowl titles. But sometimes you got to look back and say, are you successful if you've developed coaches underneath you to succeed as well? And obviously some of the players, he's coached thousands of players that have gone on to be very successful. And whatever he decides to do next, I mean, I know he's retiring from coaching football, but I wish him all the success. He's given us years of angst, but good football. Yep, whether you like him as a person or not, he gave us good football. He helped elevate the game.
Yep. And James Burgess brings up a good point. And Bill Belichick's first NFL job was a special teams assistant with the Lions.
I did not know that. Wow.
They let him walk from the building to the Browns. The Browns let him walk to New York, and then from New York to, of course, New England. But it was the New York Giants, not the Jets.
So where do we think he'll go next?
It depends on which team. A lot like Harbaugh leaving the NFL. If any of these teams hire a GM, cross that off Harbaugh's list, and I think it's crossed it off of Belichick's list. They're one of those guys that want total control of the team.
But don't you think at a certain age you get tired of doing both?
Listening to Bill talk when he did his exit speech,
Mm-hmm.
if he was tired of coaching, he'd have said, "That's it, I'm going home."
True.
He said,
True.
"I'll weigh my options."
Yeah. I
And
don't think he's done.
I don't think he's done either. Would I love for him to be a defensive coordinator? Yes. He's a great defensive mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as drafting a wide receiver, that's the only thing I'd hire a GM for because he can't draft one to save his butt. It's been
That,
proven.
that's
He's
true.
had 3 first-round wide receivers that have all busted. His best ones have been from his national scout suggestions in the later rounds.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
Julian Edelman was a yes, you're adopted. But anyway,
Oh, that's too funny.
yeah. But anyways, where was I at there?
Oh, you were talking about Belichick and
As a
being the
defensive mind,
defensive mind.
if he would be willing to step back and take a defensive coordinator and be an assistant head coach anywhere, yes, I think that is his best move he could actually do. I think it would be smarter for him to do that. To go help a young new coach getting a job and letting a new guy take the reins of the team and then just let him be in total control of the defense and offer his
Well,
professional.
let the Packers fire Joe Barry and bring Belichick. That'll never happen. But
Matt
I
LaFleur wouldn't accept that.
no, no. Could
I
you
think
see?
Matt LaFleur would those two because Matt LaFleur is an alpha male with a lot less of the defensive IQ of Bill Belichick, and he would not take a back seat to whatever he suggests.
Right, right. Do you think if Dallas loses today and they fire McCarthy, do you think there's been rumors that I've heard that Belichick would go work for Jerry Jones? Do you think that would work?
No, Jerry Jones is his own GM. You might as well. That's like asking Bill Belichick to say, "Hey, I want no control whatsoever."
Yes, yes. Every time.
Belichick going to DC would be a form of cheating. Every team in the league has been Belichick multiple times. Braylon Dennis agrees. Hell no.
That's too funny. That's too funny. Any other
Right.
topic?
I think the real spots that Belichick might be good at is the Chargers because they already have Justin Herbert. Which, if you actually look at his statistics, you know what he is? He's Philip Rivers minus the Catholicism and kids.
Okay.
He
Okay.
doesn't get it done in the playoffs. He gets his team just enough there and falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the very epitome of Phil Rivers' career.
True. True.
Great regular season numbers.
Mhm.
Looks like a fantastic quarterback. Get him in the postseason. Nope.
I agree. I agree because I remember the days when I was playing fantasy football and I actually had Philip Rivers because he did have good stats for a while there
Mm-hmm. Fantasy
back.
football. Guess who's a champ this year?
Gee, I can't imagine.
I had
I
Goff
was in.
Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta on my team,
Okay. Okay.
but I had
Any?
Travis Etienne and James Conner for running backs. I also had C.D. Lamb.
Wow. You're a little
C.D. Lamb and
stacked.
Amon-Ra alone was a little bit of a stack in the box.
I was gonna say a little stacked there on that roster.
Well, I was the 11th pick on an 11th man league. Somehow C.D. Lamb wasn't picked in the first, and I didn't realize it. I grabbed Amon Ra and then was able to come back around and get him with the first pick in the second.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy.
Because I thought he'd have been gone in the first 5.
Oh yeah. I would
Jamar
have thought so
Chase,
too.
Christian McCaffrey,
Right.
technically Josh Jacobs because of how he runs and he's a threat in the receiving room,
Mm-hmm.
Nick Chubb, and then C.D. Lamb. I really thought that was the order, and maybe Justin Jefferson switched out for one of the running backs. That's
Right.
usually the order I've seen in every mock. So I didn't even look for those guys.
That is just crazy. Holy
Mhm.
smokes. Anything else, Jeremy?
Oh, I mean, what an amazing coaching tree Saban has had, and you can't say he's not very successful. But even since our show, we went from 6 vacancies to 8.
Uh-oh.
It looks like the Raiders are not signing Antonio Pierce. He is he has received a request from the Titans to interview for that head coaching job, which the report that came out on Friday, right after that he wasn't hired, Max Crosby is waiving his no trade clause and wants out if Antonio Pierce is not the head coach. Mark Davis is doing it again. Mark my words. He's going to go Harbaugh, probably Ben Johnson. I don't think he wants Belichick because Josh McDaniels came out of that tree, which technically he came out of the Saban tree too.
True.
I think the Patriots one are, it leaves a bad taste in Mark Davis's mouth right now. So I think it's going to be Harbaugh, Ben Johnson, or one of the other defensive coaches that have just been let go.
Do you think Harbaugh would take Raiders?
They have no GM. They fired their GM too. He wants total control of a roster. Right now, the only two teams that have neither is the Chargers and the Raiders, which coincidentally are the two teams that's asked to interview him.
No, I don't know if I would take. I don't think I would go out and work for Davis. I really don't. I don't think.
I
But
think Chargers is the better fit for Harbaugh.
yeah, I would agree with that.
And yes, if you think about it, after the Raiders game, the interview with Crosby in the locker room lent me to think he wouldn't mind playing across from Hutch and for Dan Campbell and whoever's the defensive coordinator because he said some pretty good things about Detroit.
Mm-hmm. Well, you
And
guys are building
so,
a good atmosphere there. Yeah.
me, if Ben Johnson went to the Raiders, I'd get on that phone. I talked about this last night on my show. There's a trade I would make in a heartbeat. And yes, I would be trading the signal caller because they don't have a good quarterback. Get them out of our conference. Don't let them play against you except maybe in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It makes perfect sense. Goff and a third rounder for Max Crosby and a fourth rounder. And maybe throw in a future first or second round pick. Because Max Crosby is that good. And how good would our defense be going into next season? We wouldn't have to worry as much about a first year starting quarterback at the helm if your defense has got that much pressures on both sides of it.
I agree. That would be from the Green Bay perspective, I would definitely not like that.
But it would be a very smart business move.
It
You
would.
don't have to pay Goff over $40 million a year, which is what he has to be asking because he has not accepted a contract through two talks. And granted,
Mm-hmm.
that's his agent talking with our
Right.
financial people. And Matt Dunstall, or Mike Dunstall, I should say, our cap guru that does all the contracts, he's trying to be poached by the Redskins or the Commanders right now. They have requested an interview with him. John Dorsey has had a couple interviews for GM jobs. Hey, James Burgess is exactly right. Max Crosby means Aleem is facing a single blocker, basically 90% of the snaps. Juicy. If it's to get Max Crosby, I would trade whoever's on this roster they wanted, and they need a signal caller. I'm trading Goff.
Yeah. I don't think Goff is a good quarterback. He's manageable, but I don't think he's not an elite. So he's expendable. I mean, and whereas I would say Max Crosby is elite. So yes, I agree with you, Jeremy. I would trade him in a heartbeat.
It has to do with business. A
Mhm.
$20 million pass rusher or a 45 plus million quarterback. I'm taking a 25 million pass rusher with a 33% success rate all day.
And let's face it, you could even if you draft well, there is some quarterbacks out there in the draft. And look what CJ Stroud did. I mean, he's granted, he's a very good quarterback, but he's a rookie. And if you can develop a rookie quarterback, and if you also have to have an offensive line, because I do feel Carolina they didn't do anything for Bryce. But
Mm-hmm. They
I
didn't.
think
They got
that's
rid of their number one weapon. They
yep.
signed a bunch of number twos,
Hmm.
and they didn't address the O line until like the fifth round.
Right.
It was a mistake compounded by a mistake compounded by a mistake. Guess who else did that? The Bears.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
let Allen Robinson walk, who was their best wide receiver at the time,
Right.
traded up to draft Fields, and gave
Yep.
him no weapons for 2 years.
Right.
I mean, Darnell Mooney came on the second year. Big deal.
Hmm.
It didn't help them a lot. And now they got DJ Moore, but their O line's still sus because it's very injury prone.
And
That's why they struggle.
I agree. I agree. And let's face it, that Aaron Rodgers kept saying all those years, I need weapons, I need weapons, but you also need people to protect yours. You need a good O line, because if you do not have an O line, unless your weapons are that quick that they're breaking off from the guys right away, you don't have time to throw. I mean, if you sat back and watched some of those throws in some of those games yesterday, some of them they had all day. I was
There
like,
was times when Stroud had over 5 seconds to throw. There was 3 throws I could see by Mahomes where he had over 6 seconds to decide to throw the ball or run. It wasn't
yes.
even the pocket wasn't even breaking down. He was just manipulating the pocket for 5 6 seconds. Oh, there's Rasheed Rice. Oh, there's Kelsey.
Mm-hmm. And Mahomes actually, if you watch last night's games, Kelsey had a couple of key drop. There were a couple of drops in there. A couple of the receivers, they weren't bad throws. They were throws
No,
that should have been made. Now I realize with it being so cold, the football is different and it's harder to catch. That makes a difference.
and it's
But
also harder to throw. As we noticed in the first quarter, Mahomes didn't look good at all. Neither
right,
did Tua. They were sailing their passes because the ball was slipping out.
yes, yes.
And I loved what Devin McCourty said during the broadcast. He goes, "My God, I would put 10 of those hand heaters in my muff on the front of my, just to keep my hands warm so I could grip the ball when it came to me because it was so covered in ice, it was slippery. It would keep
Well,
his hands dry and hot."
and they were saying that one side of the field that it was really hard to get the tarp off because it was so icy. One of
Hmm.
the end zones, I remember.
It
So
literally stuck to the ground because of the ice.
it did. It did.
Devin
Wow.
Bynum comes in and says, "Good afternoon, everyone." James Bridges says, "I really like golf, but he's also an asset. Yeah, I'd take Max and see what Hendon can do." He agrees with us. I mean, it's not about saying Goff's bad. It's not
Mm-mm.
about wanting to get rid of Goff. It's about wanting to improve the team.
Right.
Because a quarterback, no matter who it is only as good as the team around them.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they are Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, or
Elite
and you
quarterbacks.
really you have to start to question, is Mahomes the lead anymore? Because he does not elevate the play of those around him. He has not been as good since Tyreek Hill left.
I would
They've
agree.
won more due to their defense lately than because of Pat Mahomes.
I would agree. I would agree.
I mean, he's on that borderline. Yes, he's done elite things for
Mm-hmm.
someone so young, but he's had a great team around him to do it.
Exactly.
I mean, Juju
Exactly.
Smith-Schuster isn't that great of a wide receiver anywhere else, but he was the best receiver last year, and they let him walk.
Hmm. Nope. I would agree. I would agree. Um, I don't. There, like you said, there aren't many quarterbacks that I wouldn't be able to move on from because there aren't as many elite ones anymore. And I don't even know if I'd put Aaron Rodgers anymore in that.
No, I'm
Aaron
saying
Rodgers is
Aaron
very
Rodgers, how he played through his prime is
yes.
basically done. If
Right.
you look at how he played through his prime, he was elite. Dan
Yes.
Marino was elite, but they never had an elite team around him. That's the biggest example of this. You look at that, he went to the Super Bowl, didn't win it. Matt Stafford had an elite team around him in 2014-15, but due to bad play calling and bad coaching, even less than the bad call. The bad call was just the icing on the cake. You
Right.
can't score 3 points offensively in a half and expect to win a game.
Right. Right. I mean, let's face it. A lot of people would have Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy won last year. He's not an elite quarterback by any stretch that I would say.
He's
And
got
yet,
elite numbers because he has elite players around him.
correct. Correct.
And we all saw if Trent Williams goes down, he's not good.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
3 games Trent Williams missed. Only 1 for Deebo Samuel, only 2 for Christian McCaffrey. He couldn't complete over 60% of his passes. He threw more picks than touchdowns and lost 3 games straight, including one to Minnesota they never should have lost.
I
Not with the
agree.
talent on that roster defensively.
I agree. Well, Mr. Jeremy, this has been real fun, and look at all those comments in the. I appreciate all those comments in the chat room. Any final closing thoughts?
Let's have a great game tonight. Go Lions, forward down the field, ram it down their throats, and yet, at the same time, try to be a better person than you were the day before, because that's the only way to make the world a better place. It starts in here. Much love to everybody. James Burgess, Braylon Dennis, Will Vogel, Devin Bynum. You guys were great in the chat. Love every one of you. Go Lions. I'll be at the Lions Den cheering them on because I got my first invite to an invite-only Lions Club.
Wow. Nice. So how can people get a hold of you, Jeremy?
Well, you can find me right here on the South Florida Tribune channel, on this show, the other fire-ups we do, or wherever Scott needs me. You can also find my writings on the SouthFloridaTribune.com under the Motor City Tribune with my name, Jeremy T. Ballrick, there, as the list of authors underneath great authors such as Scott Morganroth and George Eichhorn. You can also find me on Twitter, at Smokin' Jeremy on X. You can find me on Instagram, at Smokin' Jeremy B, and also on Threads at the same name.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, if you enjoyed this broadcast, please hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already, and go check out all of our other shows. Share them to everybody that you know that you think would like them. If you want to comment, like, share the broadcast. If you want to email us because you have a topic ideas or anything like that, you can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. You can listen to the audio version on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can always go to www.southfloridatribune.com. You can read Jeremy's writing, Scott's writing. We have all kinds of writing. We have transcripts. We'll have the Dolphins transcripts up as soon as we get them. Lions transcripts, Jags transcripts. You'll see some of my photography when I get out on the field and take pictures.
Lions.
Yes, yes. More importantly, the book up in the upper left, right corner, depending on above Jeremy, let's put it that way. Lessons from the Microphone. Scott Morganroth wrote it. He talks about over 40 years in the media, how media has changed. And it's a very interesting book. It's on Amazon or Kindle. Make sure you go out and get your copy today. James Burgess, tell Scott and George I said hi. We will definitely do that.
And guess what, people? I'm mentioned in that book up there.
You are. You are. So am I. Imagine that.
I don't know why you'd be mentioned. Jeez. No. Without you, Scott would be nothing on here.
Oh, no. He would be.
He'd be great. He'd be great with the publication. But I mean,
Yes.
this part. You taught him how to run this part. He knows how to run a show already.
Oh, yes.
He knows how to produce. He knows how to do all that. But without you, his tech savvy is less than a rock.
Well, I won't go that far, but yes.
It's close.
Yes. Yes. Well, if you enjoyed this show, I think we're going to do this again next week. So catch us on Fire Up on Sunday again next week. But if you want Inside the Pigskins, normally on Tuesday nights, come catch that. Pundit's Pundit is on Thursday nights, and Sports Exchange is on Wednesdays. That's the flagship show on the South Florida Tribune Network. Well, everyone, thank you so much for commenting. Thank you, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure talking about your team and my team. I do have a little green on, so I am my Go Packers today, and you have your Lions, so go Lions today. May both our teams win today.
Go Lions. Go Pack.
Yep.
I don't say
Have a
go
great.
pack go. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You don't have to say go Pack Go. I can say that. I want everybody to have a wonderful day and enjoy the games. Thanks for tuning in today.